Hey, coffee lovers. My name is Lucas, and there is no X in espresso. Today, we're going to talk about extraction, the process that turns roasted beans into your delicious beverage. After all, what we're doing is extracting all the tasty stuff from the bean into the water. Now, I'm going to dive right into this topic. But first, I'm going to go into a few key terms that I'll say a lot throughout this video. First off are agitation and infusion. Agitation is shaking and moving about. And in the context of coffee and water, it's when the coffee and water are being moved. This can be water moving through the coffee or the coffee moving around inside the water. Infusion is coffee suspended or not moving inside the water. Every brewing process uses a mix of these two processes to extract coffee, but some will rely on one more than the other generally. Next, we have temperature, grind size, dose, time, and pressure. They all play a huge role in the brewing of coffee. Water has to be at a particular temperature, usually around 200 Fahrenheit. Coffee has to be at a specific grind size, coarse or fine. We dose a certain amount of coffee per unit of water. Everything will take a certain amount of time. Some processes use pressure, like the AeroPress or espresso. These all speed up or slow down the extraction. Some example brews. I'll use our cold brew and espresso, kind of on extremes. Cold brew is brewed cold, overnight. So the water temperature is low and the time is high. In addition, the grind size is extremely coarse and there is no outside pressure. The coffee is fully infused overnight, and the only agitation occurs when you pour the water through the coffee bed into the brewing container of choice. So all parameters present slow down the brewing, except for time, which is on average 12 to 18 hours. Espresso, on the other hand, is brewed very quickly, 20 to 30 seconds. The temperature is very high. The grind size is very fine, and a lot of pressure is used. When tamping the bed of espresso and in the machine, ideally 9 bars of pressure. The coffee is agitated throughout the whole process, the water moving straight through it, except for the first couple of seconds when the pressure is slightly lower and the coffee gets fully immersed in the water. Unlike cold brew, all parameters present speed up the brewing. Thus, it only takes 20 to 30 seconds to brew espresso just right. Higher temperature, finer grind size, longer time, dose of a lot of coffee, or increased pressure all increase extraction. So if, for example, we made a hybrid brew, extremely hot water, very finely ground coffee, put a lot of it in it, lots of pressure, stirred it a lot, create a lot of agitation, and brewed for a long time, you would get an extremely strong cup of coffee. So why don't we do that? I'm going to introduce you to the wonderful Special Coffee Association brewing chart. This chart was my best friend as a barista, as a manager, as a quality control expert, as a Q grader for the longest time, and it's still one of the most useful resources to this day. If you're creating a recipe or modifying an existing recipe to create a tastier cup, refer to this chart. The axes are as follows. On the vertical axis, we have strength. the amount of coffee stuff inside the water, the solubles concentration. On the horizontal axis, we have extraction, the amount of soluble stuff from the coffee that made it into your drink, the solubles yield. Now, in the very center of the chart, we have the very sought after ideal range. We also see a lot of diagonal lines throughout the graph. These lines represent the ratio between the amount of coffee and the amount of water. The higher up the lines represent more coffee, the lower down lines represent less coffee per volume water. It is with these lines that you can analyze your own brewing practices and make decisions about your recipe. Coffee experts agree that the best tasting coffee has 20% plus or minus 2 solubles yield. Now, coffee is mostly insoluble plant matter, the stuff you throw away, or compost, after brewing. So, after all the stuff that can be dissolved in water, if we get 20% of it, we get the perfect cup. So, if we created a super extracted coffee I described earlier, it would be very high up on the strength axis, but it would also be really high up on the extraction axis. Coffee has tens of thousands of soluble solids, or the stuff that we want to extract into our water. One of those is caffeine. Yum. Some of the stuff is extremely bitter, and some of the stuff is extremely acidic. Some can taste a bit nutty, chocolatey, fruity, delicate. You name it. The flavor profile is determined by getting the right balance of stuff into your coffee. In general, the more bitter compounds tend to be heavier and get extracted later. The more sour or acidic compounds tend to be lighter and are the first solutes extracted. Looking at our chart, we have sections that say under extracted. Coffee in that range tastes uncomfortably sour. We have sections that say over extracted, which, you guessed it, taste uncomfortably bitter. It may seem counterintuitive that you have coffee in the ranges of strong and under extracted and weak and over extracted. And even if we're in the ideal range, it can still be weak or strong. Let's say you brew a cup. You don't have any fancy particle analyzers, sieve analyses, any of that equipment. You just have your taste buds. You take the first sip and note that your coffee is uncomfortably bitter. Ideally, you want to make it less bitter. Taste some of the sweetness that is present in all Arabica beans. Or maybe the bag you bought even makes a note of citrus and chocolate that you can't taste. So remember the amount of coffee and water you put in and refer to the chart. The coffee to water ratio used in your recipe is 1:20. Those are pretty easy numbers to remember and dose out. Now, there's a line on that chart that shows the 1:20 ratio, and it passes through the ideal range. So, just a slight modification can be made to the recipe to make it just right. Since we're already agreed the ratio is fine, we don't have to deal with the dose. Even if the coffee was pre-ground from the shelf or the cafe, we can make modifications. If you boil your water to pour manually into your brewer of choice, perhaps wait an extra half minute for the water to cool down, ideally to 200 Fahrenheit. If the machine is automatic, program it to finish sooner, less time. No matter the circumstances and the equipment you have, even if there's just one of these parameters you can control, the brewing can be modified to get the extraction just right. My goal, after all, is for everyone to find coffee delicious and enjoy the beverage to its fullest. No matter how much equipment one may have at their disposal, having this chart and knowing what speeds up and slows down brewing will be the perfect resources to find any recipe to fit one's needs. I understand fully that everyone has different preferences in coffee. Some may prefer coffee much more bitter. Some may like the very sour and delicate tastes. I like coffee that tastes like blueberries and raspberries and jasmine. The ideal range, therefore, does not apply to every consumer of coffee. But no matter where you start on the chart, you can always move your spot to make it the perfect cup for you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget the usual stuff to help YouTube: liking, subscribing, and commenting all of your questions and comments. And this stuff helps me, too. Sharing this video helps a lot, too. So get the word out. Anyway, thanks again for watching. I will be back hopefully very soon with more coffee-related videos. But until then, I hope you all have a fantastic day. Enjoy your coffee, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.